Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith. Welcome back to 15-Minute Tier List, the show where we make a Fire Emblem tier list in 15 minutes. And today, oh boy, today is Thracia 776. So this game is interesting to tier 4 because with all stats capping at 20, just like Shadow Dragon, Blade of Light, Fire Emblem 1, Fire Emblem 3, all stats cap at 20. And with all the scrolls, you have ways of making pretty much any unit cap any stat you want, almost, except for magic, for non-magical line units. So unit viability matters a lot more on availability, uniqueness of gear, or particular utility that they offer. As such, this tier list might look a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to place a pure combat unit in S tier, but we'll find out. Let's go. First of all, let's start with tiering Leaf. I'm going to give Leaf A tier. Yeah, I said it. I'm giving Leaf A tier. Also, I'm going to adjust this ever so slightly. Yeah, I'm giving Leaf A tier mostly because his utility is pretty solid. He's workable combat-wise. Give him a booster or some scrolls. Level him up. He's a pretty solid combat unit. He's the only unit that doesn't fatigue because he has to be on every map. The light brand is really good early on. Later on, he has some other pretty good swords he has access to. The King Sword is pretty nice, giving him charm as well as his supports. He supports like half the cast. Actually a really solid unit, even if you just use him as a support bot. Even as a support unit, he's great. So, who else do we tier? Avel? Wow, these character portraits are so stretched. I am sorry, but you're going to see some cutting off at the bottom. Hopefully that fixes some of it. Avel, what can I say? She's... Spoilers with Avel. She's great for the first few chapters, not necessarily required, but really solid. And then she disappears for most of the game, and most playthroughs will never actually get her back because you have a very specific... some specific things you have to do, and you only get her back for the final chapter. I think she still has a leadership star when you get her back, though, so that's something. Leadership star is something. Her early game usefulness is definitely something, especially against particular early game bosses. Would I give her full B tier, though? With how much she's just not in the game, I'm tempted to put her down to C tier, honestly. Just because of how much of the game she misses. But kind of that's where I'm going to leave her. I don't think she deserves any lower than that because she is such a solid unit. We have to be doing these faster, though, because otherwise I will never reach the end. Said, he's a delete key for the end game. He has good staff utility, he comes with good spells. He misses out on a majority of the game, though. But he is there, I feel, enough to make an impact. But once again, if I'm giving Ivel C for availability, I have to give Said C for availability. Leonoan has a pretty solid A tier. She comes about halfway through the game. She has good staff access, light spell access. Honestly, staff wielders with a high staff rank are just solid in this game, and Leonoan is one of them. Speaking of staff wielders with low staff access, I'm just grabbing these units as I see them or as I think of them. Safi is an S tier unit because, well, first of all, okay, she's your early game staff bot. What's so special about that? Well, in Thracia, staffs are very important, and having a staff unit with solid skill, so they don't miss all the time, and magic, is very important, because then by the end game, you have her being able to use important staffs through magic up, through things like silence and sleep. She's just a very solid unit, and the only reason you won't deploy her is because you're trying to not fatigue her for a future chapter. I'm looking at Galzus, and I'm going to throw him in the same tier as Said. He's a delete key, player phase or enemy phase, if you get him. But he's around for so little of the game that I can't really justify any higher than C tier. Lara S tier, Dancer, Thief. You can promote from Thief to Rogue to Dancer to Rogue to give her infinite levels, which will not help her at all because her growths are terrible, and also she's far more valuable as a Dancer than as a Rogue, especially when you already have other Rogues, like Pan, available. Speaking of Pan, where is he? It's Glyphis. Yeah, I'm giving him A tier. Because he comes in, he's solid stat-wise, can wield all the swords you really need him to wield, can steal a lot of the things that Glyphis might not be able to. I'm going to give Glyphis A tier as well, but definitely a little bit lower than Pan. Glyphis is your prime thief before Pan comes in, and if he gets certain con growths, he can be as good as Pan, but getting those con growths is so rare and so problematic. I'm going to give Karen A tier as well. Because flyer utility on all outdoor maps, pretty much as soon as you have it, is amazing. She does struggle in the fact that sometimes her combat stats aren't that great, whatever. Sometimes she gets blessed in specific ways. My Karen, when I played through Thracia, got like +3 movements over the course of the game, and so she outranged ballistas by just being able to move from outside of the range into being able to attack them. That's quite the unit. Dalshin is D tier because he's decent enough when you get him, but he's slow, pretty inaccurate. His defensive stats don't end up actually making him as survivable as you wish he was. Again, all units can be made good in this game because of the way scrolls work, but he just takes too much investment despite being available for so much of the game. Carry On, I'll put in B tier. He's level 1 when he comes in, but he's a Cavalier, which is better than a dedicated Sword or Lance Knight. He has good growths at base. He comes with a sword that gives him Paragon, which you can give to anyone else. But he definitely makes good use of it. Or is that through an event? Either way. He's a solid combat unit when you level him up. And even without... Like, if you don't level him up, then obviously he's not going to go anywhere. But people have compared him to like Nino and S, and I don't think that's true. Just because he comes in at level 1, he comes in just after the Master arc, so you have plenty of time to train this guy up and plenty of enemies to do so on. It's not that much of a challenge to level him up, and he becomes a very solid unit when you do. It's just a matter of, because you have to level him up, he's B tier instead of being A tier. A unit that is A tier, though, is going to be Osane. Debating putting him S tier. He's really only as good as how long his Fuji lasts, and if you end up promoting him at the right time. And his stats can be a little bit variable. He's a little bit hard to control, a little bit unwieldy because of his Wrath. He's very good, deletes a lot of enemies, but because of that Wrath, if you put him against too many enemies in enemy phase, he's liable to die, especially with 1 RN, and the fact that he's almost never going to be hitting 0 avoid. He's bulky, but not necessarily bulky enough to carry all the units you'd like him to carry, but he's bulky enough to not necessarily be rescuable by the units you'd like him to be rescued by. He has a little bit of issues when it comes to that, and outside of combat, he doesn't really have any utility. That said, his combat utility itself is good enough to make him A tier. I'm just looking at the bottom of this tier list and going, okay, Marty, I'll give you D tier. Mostly because your massive con allows you to be a lift bot, and lift bots are more useful than nothing. So you're D tier. Leveling you up as a meme, but I'll give you D tier. I'll give Ronin and Tanya C tier. Debating Ronin B, 1 for the memes, but 2 for the 3 movement stars he has. But it's 3. It's not 5, it's not 1, it's 3. He's a very awkward unit. He has more magic than strength, but there's no magic bows. He'll have good resistance, I guess, but that doesn't necessarily matter when you're failing to one-shot a Pegasus Knight and the Escape chapter because you never level up your strength. If you level either of these up, then they can be good with a decent bow. But the problem is going to be getting them that experience, and is it really worth it feeding it to a weak archer when you have someone like Sylphina, who comes in a little bit later and has a mount, and so is naturally a little bit better. She's still very fragile, but she's able to wield pretty much all the good bows you'll want her to, like the Brave Bow at base, and so she's fine combat-wise, as well as the mount gives her utility in rescuing and some other stuff as well. Not quite as good on indoor maps, but doesn't require the level of training, so definitely a tier above. Dagdar, I attempted to put in S tier, but I'm putting him in A tier because he is sometimes more of a liability than an asset. Like, he's always an asset, but sometimes a little bit more of a liability with the charge skill, where he will get doubled by, will see 2 rounds of combat with everything that he doesn't kill in the first round, including ballista, including enemy like mages, including pretty much everything except for like sleep staffs or whatnot. And he's gonna get hit by sleep staffs anyway, because unless you do the deployment trickery to make him not as much of a target, he has no magic and he's gonna go down. Yeah. Other than that, really solid unit. Pretty much throughout all of when you have him, there's something for him to do. I'm tempted to give Sarah S tier, but I think that she sees little enough of the game that she kind of caps out at A tier. She doesn't have any unique staves for her outside of the Kia staff, which is great for endgame, but that's about it. She has solid availability, solid weapon ranks, so her spell availability, her weapon availability, and staves are fine. She comes with Paragon and Wrath, and was it Paragon and Wrath or Paragon Advantage? I forget exactly what she comes with. She comes with a lot of good skills. She comes with a lot of useful things, traits about her that just make her a good unit. She just comes a little bit too late in the game for me to give a solid S tier to. Her performance needs to be completely outstanding to come in that late and deserve an S tier. Ocean? Othin? Halvin. Ocean is... Oh, yeah, whatever. Halvin, I'm giving B tier because he's just a worse Ocean. He gets the Brave Axe, but the Brave Axe isn't a personal weapon. He's a solid fighter, hero, if you promote him, but he never really kind of gets anywhere or goes anywhere. But because he's so solid and easy to train up, because he has near perfect availability for this game, I'm giving him B tier. Salem, I'm giving B tier as well. I didn't use him in my first run, but everything I've seen of him from other runs I've watched, he ends up being quite good, quite solid. Debating to put him in A tier. I probably should put him into A tier because he's that useful, because he has the good ranks, because he has the dark magic access, which rarely matters, but is decent. Jormungandr on your side doesn't poison, but not that enemies being poisoned would do much. Homer I'm giving B tier because he's another mage. He can make a pretty decent mage in endgame, and he gets Paragon to level up faster, I think. But he starts so weak and so low level that it's kind of problematic to level him up. He'll do fine if you manage to, though. Miranda is probably the one true F tier of this game, because she comes in so late. She's like a level 1 or 2 mage. Her only skill is in fire, and even that needs to be trained a lot before she's able to use Meteor or something. Way too much investment and too little time to do it in. Miranda is the original Nino, and she sucks. And my goodness, these 15 minutes are passing quickly. I need to speed up. As well as S tier. Need I say more? Infinite speed, Graph Caliber, boss killer. Sias, you have to do some specific stuff to get him. He's pretty solid once you do. I'll give him similar to Lewin, or Sed, not Lewin. What am I talking about? Similar to Sed. Basically, do you want more leadership stars and staff utility, or do you want more spell combat utility? That's your choice. I'll give B tier to Ralph because he's a hero who comes in mid game. He's decent. He doesn't impress, but he doesn't unimpress either. I've never recruited you, so I can't rightfully judge, but I've heard he's good. He's a solid mage knight. You just have to give up Olwen for him. Olwen really depends on the build. Her Dire Thunder is great if you can get her to a point where she can really use it. Giving her Vantage can be very helpful, but she can sometimes miss, and because of how fragile she is, if she misses, then she ends up taking a lot of damage and potentially dying immediately. I think she's worked out great for me, but I know a lot of people that she didn't work out so much for, and so kind of B tier, because she does really depend on that build, on giving her something like Vantage or something else to abuse. Nana, I'll give A tier too, because she's a really solid unit. Debating S tier, actually, because the Earth Sword is so good, but also the Earth Sword, I think, still only has 10 uses. It does have 60 in this game. I forget. Either way, Nana, once again, a really solid unit. Maybe I will give her S tier, just because mounted healing, as well as fighting, is just so good, and Earth Sword's utility as well. Fargus, A tier. Fargus? Fergus? Whatever your name is, you get an A tier as well. Swords are pretty good weapon types, and you're one of the better sword builders in the game. Speaking of who's not a better sword builder in the game, Shanam, the Sham, D tier, because you have Bargain. Bargain's not really useful. He has some usability. He can technically be used. He has enough stats to get the job done if you really need him to. Not so great. Merida, I'm giving B tier. She's really easy to train and can be very impressive if you do so. But again, she's a sword-locked, folk-locked unit that can sometimes struggle. She suffers a little bit from availability, though honestly she has solid enough availability. It doesn't really matter. Misha, I'll give C tier. I'm sure she's probably pretty good, but I've also never recruited her, so, you know, I can't give an honest rating. Same with this woman. I'm sorry, I'm having to rush through these, because I say 15-minute tier list, this is going to be like 20 minimum. Ooh boy, not looking forward to some other games. Connemore, I'll give C tier as well. Where's he? Glade. Is this Glade? No, this is Glade. No, this is Glade. This is Connemore. Glade, I'll give B tier because of the leadership star and the solid enough stats all around. Connemore, am I certain that this is the way that works? Connemore is C tier because he's just a paladin. It's kind of unimpressive. Glade will give B tier because he's a paladin. It's unimpressive, but he comes earlier and has the leadership star. Xavier, he's a solid armor knight. Really pretty good when you get him. He's not going to overly impress, and his recruitment makes him not worth it. But I'm not judging based on recruitment, I'm judging based on if he's an actual viable unit by himself. And which seems to be the case. Okay, Misha is, I'll give her B tier because she's always around enough to be able to do something. Finn is A tier, debating S tier, but no, I think he's just kind of top of A. Once again, really solid, doesn't have any sort of lance utility inside, which is the only thing keeping him from S. Trude, I'll give him C tier. He's another sword fighter that's... maybe I'll give Misha C tier as well. Another sword fighter that's just kind of mediocre, just kind of is who he is. Yeah. Tina is a hesitant S tier. She has the unique access to the Thief Staff and the Unlock Staff, which allows her to be very useful, but she's very inconsistent because she has very little skill, so she'll miss a lot. But she also has 5 movement stars, and so she double acts a lot. And so she is... if the RNG is on your favor, she's an absolute beast of a unit, because of all the massive utility she can provide. If it's not in your favor, then, you know, she's at least gaining experience. Okay. Dalmid... should I give him B tier? I guess he comes in enough, and he's solid enough to warrant it. He'll have a mount outside, and he's decent enough inside because he'll use his sword rank in both places. You have a Wyvern Rider who's a C tier in Ada? Again, I'm rushing through these so fast I don't remember their names. She is weak and very hard to level. It can be done. She doesn't have a lot to do once it's done, but it can be done, and she does become a decent unit if you manage to do it. Shiva, I'll give B tier for. Another just solid Navarre-type swordmaster. Not as good as Marita, but comes in earlier than Marita. Just pretty good. Dean, do I give Dean A tier is the question. I think I do, just because his output is so impressive in the chapters he's on. And even when he dismounts, he's still strong enough. He has a good sword rank, and he has good enough stats that even losing the ones he does lose make him viable, perfectly viable for endgame maps. Just out of the box. Hicks, I'll give B tier, and this tier list is now too big to see the entire thing of, so congratulations. Hicks, I'll give B tier. He's never as impressive as you want him to be, but the fact that he can do as much as he does is great. Being mounted helps a lot in a lot of outdoor maps, especially the larger ones. Who else are these other units? I'm going to need a goodbye S tier just to take a look at them. Never recruited you, but you're a good, solid staff bot, so I'm going to give you B tier at least. Where's this glade? Why do I not know who these units are? Like, seriously. I know that this is just the mediocre chump squad from that accompanies... No, you're Fred. Fred's a B tier unit. He's fine. Nothing impressive about him, but he's fine. I think this is the mediocre chump squad that joins in with Selfina. I think it's wrong to give them D tier, though. Is it, though? I don't know. They're never really going to do anything helpful for you, and so I think in that respect, like, you can train them up and they're perfectly valuable, viable. If I'm giving them D tier, then I can't necessarily give Carrion B tier, so I think I'll give them C tier. Yeah, that looks right to me. That looks right to me. If you have any major complaints with this tier list, they're probably valid, because I've only played Thracia through once. I picked B route, and that's all I have to say for myself. If you want to, if you enjoyed the process of me not being able to remember who's who, and eventually making a tier list that looks somewhat accurate anyway, give me a like in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel, please, if you enjoy this and want more horrible tier lists, because I'm making one for every game, and this is Fire Emblem 5. We're going to be going through the entire series from 1 to whenever it is open when I'm done. Until then, thank you so much. Leave a comment down below with what changes you'd make, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. This is Mitchell Zenith signing out.